If you're eating out at this restaurant, you're already a huge winner, but there are levels to this. Because while dining here is an experience of high sophistication, you might even say urbanity, the locations and urban contexts oftentimes fall a bit short. So, you all knew this was coming. I'm gonna count down the top 10 most urbanist Cheesecake Factory locations in the US. And yes, this is sort of an April Fool's bit, but also it is a way to talk about what I think is an important aspect of cities, which is just restaurants. Because to me, a really great dining experience is inextricable from its urban context. Like, I don't think I've had a single memorable meal in my life at a restaurant I had to drive to. And this will be US focused just due to the nature of the restaurant chain in question, but there are going to be some plot twists, including some amazing international examples. So let me anticipate one reasonable question you might have at this point, which is this just going to be 15 minutes of Cheesecake Factory jokes? And if not, why not? Well, besides the larger point that a good dining experience invariably takes place in an urban setting, there are specific things about this particular restaurant chain that beg the question. Like the idea that the Cheesecake Factory should be an urbanist restaurant concept is right in the name. Just the concept of a factory is deeply interwoven with the history of American cities, including the advent of zoning and land use planning, and the environmentalism of the 60s and 70s. So, a couple points to make here. Although these are literal factories dedicated to the production at scale of a single dessert item, you will rarely find them in areas zoned for industrial use. The sad reality is, if you browse through the locations page on the company website, you'll quickly realize that the vast majority of outlets are located at shopping malls or lifestyle centers that are largely inaccessible without a car and only walkable in a very limited sense. And there are reasons to care about walkability specific to this particular restaurant. Just given the portion sizes, you probably just want to start burning it off right away. So, as usual, the listicle top 10 format of this kind of video is really just a Trojan horse for talking about aspects of urbanism and transportation that I think are really important. And to walk through the criteria I used to make this list, let's go with the location I had at number 12 out of the chain's 217 US locations, and that's on Colorado Boulevard in Old Town Pasadena, California. Walkability, I tinkered around with a different metric for this, but ended up coming back to walk score for reasons that'll become clear later in the video. Pasadena is a 98 out of 100, which I think is reasonable. I filmed at this location back in 2022. There's even a pedestrian scramble signal here. Bike score was also a criterion, and Pasadena fares less well here. Urban form, I want something that has a strong relationship with the street environment and ideally sidewalk seating, so I eyeballed all of these and graded them on a 1 to 10 scale, and this one's a 9 for me. Transit access, it's going to be impossible to make this list if there isn't rail transit nearby, and Pasadena does have the world's longest light rail line, within a quarter mile. And I looked at frequency of trains at 8 p.m. on a Saturday, which can be a tricky time. 6 trains an hour here. And finally, centrality. I wanted locations that are central to a metro area and a transit network, and this location kind of falls apart here. It's definitely central to the city of Pasadena, but not really the LA metro area. Just to be clear, there are highly transit accessible locations that have justifiably terrible walk scores, and there are highly walkable locations that have terrible transit access, but you really needed to have both to get on today's list, although the Miami Beach location on Lincoln Road did actually come in at number 11. Awful transit access, but one of the very best on walkability and urban form. Okay, now that you understand how this is all going to work, let's get into it. 10, San Diego, down in the Seaport District. So this one is very central, and the main reason I've got it no higher than 10 is the walk score rating of 92, which is very good, obviously, but the worst on this list. I did bike through this area when I visited last October. Seaport Village is extremely walkable in itself, but the street environment the restaurant itself opens onto is pretty uninspiring, so the location falls down a bit on urban form too. Transit access, though, pretty good. You've got a green line stop within a block, and then the whole transit hub around Santa Fe Depot and American Plaza is just 4 blocks away. I'd just say, if you haven't been to San Diego, it's probably a better transit city than you think. 9. Cambridge, Mass. This was a tough one to slot in. It clearly belongs, but there are a couple issues it needs to overcome. One is it's sort of urbanist and walkable, but also sort of a corporate mall environment, so it doesn't score quite as well on walkability and urban form as other locations we're going to look at. Also, like Pasadena, it's technically a suburb, which hurts the centrality a little, but this part of Cambridge is more central to the metro area than most of Boston itself is. And that also means the location is going to be relatively well supplied on transit. You've got the trunk of the Green Line up at Lechmere, which means a ton of frequency all times of day. And it is Cambridge, so you've got the highest bike score rating of any location on this list. 8. Another nominally suburban location, Arlington, Virginia. This one gets dinged on centrality more than any other location in the top 10, but this corridor between Rosslyn and Ballston does have a more urban feel to it than the downtowns of lots of central cities in the US. In fact, I give this one a 10 for urban form. This is like the platonic ideal of an urbanist Cheesecake Factory. I think I referred to this style as Epstein Island Rococo at some point. Whatever it is undeniably beautiful and tasteful. Also, scores extremely well on transit. The Clarendon Metro station is 2 blocks away, so you've got access to the Orange and the Silver, which run pretty decent frequencies on Saturday evening. And we might not be done with DC yet, so stay tuned. 7. Let's head to the Mountain West for some geographic variety. Downtown Salt Lake City, which you may associate more with enormous city blocks and arterial roads wide enough to U-turn an entire cattle drive, neither of which are conducive to great walkability. And the walk score of 94 is on the low side for this list, but check out the street environment. Yes, part of the frontage is on a hideous arterial, but the storefront actually opens up onto Regent Street, which is basically a modern Woon Earth that was grafted onto the original downtown grid. So this is as good an urban form as there is on this list, and I'm giving a 10 for centrality. And you're steps away from the city center light rail station where you can get the blue or the green, and both run every 15 minutes on Saturday evening. Definitely going to this one whenever I manage to get to Salt Lake. 6. Chicago, and as central as this one is, with a location right on the Magnificent Mile, I kinda expected it to show up higher on this list. It does have a 99 walk score, but there are a couple things working against it. 1. Transit access. It's over a quarter mile to the Chicago Avenue Red Line station, which is a totally acceptable walk, but most of the entries on this list are much more convenient to transit. And then the relationship to the street. It's basically invisible in the basement of the gargantuan John Hancock Center. Now, once you get down there, you do get to feast your eyes on an absolute architectural masterpiece. So another tough one to slot, and I'm happy to take feedback from cheesecake-loving Chicagoans down in the comments. Okay, these next 3 were very tightly grouped, so I had to look at them pretty closely. I've got downtown Denver at number 5. The location is about as central to Denver as you can get, kind of at the midpoint between the city's 2 major transit hubs, Union Station and the downtown light rail loop. Another way to look at this is, it's 5 blocks away from either, but if you really can't handle walking 5 blocks, you're in luck because the outlet is located right on the 16th Street Mall, which, if you've never been, has a free shuttle bus that connects Union Station and the light rail loop every 6 minutes on Saturday evenings. This is one of the best street environments in the entire Cheesecake Factory universe, and also a bit of channel trivia, it's the only location I've actually ever eaten at, like 25 years ago. 4. San Francisco. We visited this location in last week's video. Union Square is the commercial center of the city, with good access to BART, Muni, and all the transit services on Market Street. 99 walk score. I think whether you have this one higher or lower on the list comes down to how you feel about rooftop restaurants, because this one is up on the 8th floor of the Macy's building, and I do have it on good authority that it's gonna stay put, despite Macy's itself closing up shop. Although the locals don't consider it serious dining, so maybe they don't deserve it. Anyway, I did ding this one slightly on the urban form rating because I value the relationship to the street, but you could argue that there's something distinctly urban about a rooftop restaurant. I mean, where else but a city are you going to get views worth having? 3, Boston Prudential Center, and my first thought was that this was going to be a front runner for number 1, and it is a strong contender, but it's got a couple issues. One, not quite as central as some others on this list, which also impacts transit access. The only immediate rail connection is the E Green Line train, and it's a bit of a hike to the other Green Line trains, and to several other rail connections at Back Bay Station. But walk score 98, and the urban form is, I give it a 9. It's got a bit of a corporate mall vibe for being so close into the city center, but this is pretty strong. If you too are an enjoyer of the world's finest restaurant, then you probably already know what the top 2 are. And for me, there was some separation between them and the rest of the list, but they are also very hard to decide between. I almost wanted to call it a draw, but that just feels a little too wishy-washy for me, and I have higher standards for this channel, just like I do for my dining experiences. But before we get to the final 2, and a whole bunch of honorable mentions, consider subscribing, hitting the bell, following on social media, whatever. I'm told there are still tickets left for Friday, April 24th in New York. Cool opportunity for a night out in the city with hundreds of other like-minded urbanist dorks, enthusiasts. Man, I love visiting New York and I just can't wait to get there. Speaking of, you're gonna wanna know, where is New York City in all of this? Sadly, no outlet in Manhattan. You either have to go way out to Queens Center, which does have excellent subway access, by the way, but it's a haul, and Queens Center is kind of an uninspiring mall situation. Or you have to go to Jersey City, but the location is a little weird. On the one hand, the restaurant faces right onto a Hudson Bergen light rail platform, but on the other hand, it's a mall location and doesn't exactly embrace the street environment. So neither of these, or any of the other locations in the tri-state area, make the list. It would actually be disrespectful to call any location of this dining establishment a dishonorable mention. Actually, the dishonorable thing is great urban locations that didn't make it through COVID, so downtown Seattle, RIP, and Baltimore Inner Harbor, just gone far too soon. Especially heartbreaking since the city itself is still listed under store locations, but it's just a sad mirage, like the phantom limb of a better world. A couple other interesting locations. Providence, Rhode Island, bonus points for being Amtrak adjacent, but then I penalized it for reminding me of that Netflix show about the secret mall apartment. And best location in Texas? Gotta be downtown Fort Worth. You know, I never talk about Fort Worth on this channel, even though it's the 11th largest city proper in the US, but I actually like this a lot. Might have to visit at some point. Let's go international. There's only one outlet in Canada, and it does have decent subway access, but the urban context itself is just pretty dismal. Actually, several locations in Mexico, and I've been to Park Delta, which features probably the most urban outlet in Mexico City. Actually, just a short walk to excellent metro access, and these are like 3-minute headway lines, but the location itself is hidden inside the mall. I guess the good news is, once you're here, there are just a wealth of excellent dining options, so when you hear people rave about what an incredible capital of gastronomy Mexico City is, well, now you understand. Cheesecake Factory has not branched out to Europe yet because, well, let's face it, the European palate could never comprehend. But you can find TCF in a few Asian cities. The Bangkok location is actually super interesting. Kind of an urban mall like Park Delta, but really well connected to the MRT rail system, and I don't know. This is all pretty corporate, but it's Bangkok. It's gonna be a fun night out. The place the company is really latched onto, though, is the Middle East, and there are several locations in the UAE, including the Mall of the Emirates location in Dubai, which I'm told is the world's largest. You know, it's easy to make fun of this restaurant's wacky architectural stylings, but in a place like Dubai, it barely registers. It's like a match made in heaven. Let's do the top two. This was tough, but I've got DC at number 2. Walk score 98, and this is a 10 for urban form. It's the rare outlet of this establishment that's almost understated. It actually meshes with the rest of the street frontage. Ironic, since we're like one block from the under construction White House ballroom, which by all accounts actually looks more like a Cheesecake Factory than the restaurant does. Also, for my money, the best transit access on this list. You're a block away from McPherson Square Station, which is served by 3 metro lines, and you're just a couple blocks from Metro Center, which also gives you Red Line access. So amazing proximity to at least 20 trains per hour in each direction. So number 1 for me is Philadelphia Center City. It isn't clear cut. This one is on the 2nd floor, which is interesting, but in my mind makes it a little less of an urban feeling location than DC. This is a great location for transit. The Broad Street line is just out the front door, the Patco is a block or 2 away, and you're just a couple blocks from the whole core of the system at City Hall, so this has to be number 1 for centrality, but SEPTA frequency on a Saturday night, not quite on par with the DC Metro. Better bike score than DC though, and the only location in this whole analysis that had a perfect 100 on walk score. But let's talk about this briefly because the Redfin folks were kind enough to give me an API key, but I get a bit tired of shilling for them for free. I explored using the EPA's National Walkability Index instead. It looks very robust on the surface, but when it got into the specific locations, let's just say I had some questions. They only give this census block group a 12.17 out of 20 for walkability, but the block group across the street is a 19.33. It just doesn't seem fully baked. So if you only get 2 things from this video, it's number 1, I will only bring you the most bulletproof analysis, and 2, if you want the finest of fine dining experiences, don't go to Europe. You know what they do have in Europe though? Trains. Lots and lots and lots of trains. I'm actually not as well traveled as I'd like to be, so I often find myself watching travel shows about European cities that I've never been to, like Luxembourg. I do like these kinds of shows, but they never spend nearly enough time talking about public transit. Well, there's a new show that solves that problem, and it's Day Pass from Not Just Bikes creator Jason Slaughter. In this episode, he goes to Luxembourg, where they eliminated transit fares nationwide in 2020, even for intercity trains, and he rides as many trains, trams, buses, funiculars, and public elevators as he can in a single day, and he still manages to get lost in a castle. It really is exactly the stuff that I want to see in a travel show. Day Pass is exclusive to the Nebula platform, and it's a great example of how Nebula supports creators in developing more and more ambitious content. Jason's regular channel is always good, but teaming up with Nebula Studios on Day Pass means opening up a world where you can join him to explore great world cities and, more importantly, gawk over cool transit infrastructure. And Nebula has all kinds of creators who deliver the goods on urban planning, engineering, and architecture, but you'll find great creators in all kinds of different spaces, whether it's culture, science, comedy, or current events. Being part of the Nebula community of creators has been absolutely critical when it comes to growing my channel and connecting with new audiences. So when you subscribe, yes, it means you get my content early and ad-free, but also subscribing really helps support what I do in a structural way. And it's also an investment in continuing to make the Nebula streaming experience itself better and better. Because yes, Nebula is kind of like Netflix for people who have a bit of an unhealthy fixation on trains, but it's much more. It's a home base for content that's a little more thoughtful, that's created by humans for humans, which I think is more important than ever. And there's a pretty big idea behind all of it. Raising the level of the entire platform and growing it into a prestige streaming service. So if you use my custom link down in the description or the QR code right here on screen, you're gonna get the best deal. All the Nebula content for 50% off the regular price when you sign up for an annual subscription, or you can do a lifetime subscription. Regular price is currently $500, but with my creator link, it's just $300. You pay once, and you get Nebula for as long as both you and Nebula exist. Nebula subscribers also get guest passes, one every month or three per quarter if you're on annual or lifetime. Once active, guests can binge all the Nebula content they want for a week, and no payment info is required. So, signing up for Nebula really is a fantastic way to demonstrate your support for a one of a kind creator owned platform and to fund the continued production of amazing exclusives. And there's great new stuff hitting the platform all the time. So, my recommendation, use my link or the QR code right here to get Nebula for 50% off the annual price or just $300 for the lifetime. It's nebula.tv/CityNerd, and then go check out Jason Slaughter's Day Pass episode in Luxembourg right now. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining today, and thanks as always to the patrons for supporting what I do directly. Particularly important because I just don't think a Cheesecake Factory endorsement deal is coming my way in the immediate future. Thanks for the support from Nebula subs as well. Keep the great topic suggestions coming. I'll be back with a new episode in a couple weeks, and I'll see you then.